and welcome to Pontiac Enchanté. The introductory clip that you just saw is, I guess, sort of wishful thinking on our part, because it really does not look like that here this evening. You saw footage taken on a beautiful summer day. Thank you, by the way, to Ben Stanland for that wonderful drone photography of our venue. It really doesn't look like that this evening. It is windy, it is insanely gusty, it's pretty cold. 2 trees fell down on one of our roads. It's definitely a winter night here. So all that to say, just a short disclaimer before we start. If this stream just totally dies, that probably means that we lost power. I'll be able to communicate with you in that case via Facebook. I'm going to write on our Facebook page if we have in fact lost power and are not able to continue the concert. Maybe by saying that I've jinxed it a little bit. I really hope not. So here's hoping that that's not the case. But just to tell you that this is rural Canada in the winter and these things do happen. Having said that, I'd like to welcome viewers from across the country. I know that Meagan and Amy have a reach that extends far beyond the Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto region, extending all the way out to the West Coast. So for wherever you are in the country this evening, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Carson Becky. I'm the artistic director of Pontiac Enchanté. Et aussi, bonsoir et bienvenue à notre invité francophone. You're all joining us this evening on our virtual concert hall platform on Pontiac Enchanté's website. I think quite a few of you have been to our concerts, or if you can go to a concert online. You've attended our online concerts in the past, but for those of you who are here for the first time, first of all, a big welcome from us. And second of all, let me just take you through some of the features on the virtual concert hall that will allow you to experience this concert with all the tools that we're giving you. So first of all, on the left-hand side of the media viewer, you'll see a button saying View or Download Concert Program. I would strongly recommend that you click on that. It'll open up a separate window in your browser that gives you a PDF of today's program. The other thing you can do is if you have a second device, a phone or an iPad, or if you're one of these people that has multiple monitors, which that's pretty cool, you can open that program on your second screen so that you're able to both watch the concert and look at the program, much like you would do if you were attending a concert in person. The pieces this evening have specific titles in some cases, and also you can read Meagan and Amy's biographies on that document. So I'd recommend that you download that so you can follow along. You can also make sure that they're not going off-piste and that they're actually playing what they said they were going to play. So that's the concert program feature. On the right-hand side of the media viewer, you'll see a button that says Donate. And I would love if every single person watching tonight was inclined to click on that button. This concert series right now is running solely on donations. So in normal years when it's not a global pandemic, we invite about 120 people to our space here for concerts, and tickets usually cost $30. Online, we're offering these concerts for free, but we really do need donations to keep this going. So if you enjoy tonight's concert, I'd recommend, or I would ask you please to donate something, any amount that you feel is appropriate. And $30 is a standard ticket price. $20 for a student. Those amounts are suggested donations on the form, but you can also leave whatever you'd like. So thank you in advance for your generous donations. Finally, in terms of making your experience more immersive, if you hover your mouse over the viewer, the media viewer, and click on a little square in the bottom right-hand corner, that will put the picture to full screen. So you'll be able to see even bigger pictures of Meagan and Amy on your screens. And I would also encourage you to adjust the volume buttons as well. I don't want you to be losing hearing after this concert, and I also don't want you to be getting like right up close to your speakers to make sure that you can hear everything. So you'll find the volume controls in the bottom left of the viewer, I think. It might be also the bottom right. And you can toggle that and make sure that you're listening tonight at a comfortable volume. At all of our concerts that we host here in person, I always thank our sponsors. But since we've been running these live stream concerts since September 2020, this is now our 4th set of live stream concerts, I've had to say an extra special thank you to our sponsors because we really would not be here without their generous support. So when the pandemic lockdowns began back in March, I reached out to all of our sponsors and said, look, our concert series was due to start at the end of this month. We can't run that concert. I don't know what we're going to be able to do in April, and honestly, we have no idea what the rest of the year is going to look like. So let me know what you'd like to do, and I completely understand if you'd rather withdraw your donation at this point. I know that things are tight in many ways. And not a single one of our sponsors withdrew their support. They all said, look, we don't know what's happening either, but we know that we like what you do and it's important to us. So if it helps, please keep doing it, and we support you. And I was so appreciative of that gesture. And that sponsorship allowed us to buy all of the equipment that you're watching this concert on. So we now have a live stream setup of 4 cameras. We have lights that have been lent to us by a generous community association. I'll talk about that next. You can't see this, and it's probably good that you can't see it, but it looks like the floor in here is covered with snakes because there are just cords going everywhere. We didn't own any of those cords before September, so we've had to purchase a lot of equipment. And thanks to our very generous sponsors, we've been able to do that and keep this concert series going. So I'd just like to go through the list and say a very, very wholehearted thanks to every one of them. So I'd like to start with Mark, Deb, and Jenna Rondell and the RBC Wealth Management Group. Mark and Jenna and Deb have been sponsors of the series since we first started putting on concerts back in 2009 and have been very faithful sponsors all the way through. So a huge thank you to Mark, Jenna, Deb, and everybody at the RBC Rondell Wealth Management Group. Second to Dasha Schenkman, who is not watching this evening because she lives in London, England, so that would be an ambitious thing to do for sure, to be watching a concert at 1 in the morning, but I know she's going to be watching tomorrow afternoon. Our 2 p.m. concert is more reasonable in British time. So a big thank you to Dasha Schenkman for her support. Next to Marg Campbell, who's been a generous supporter for a few years. Marg has barely missed a concert. I know she hasn't missed any of these live stream concerts either, but we especially miss having her here in her typical seat in our balcony just at the top of the stairs. And Marg, we can't wait to have you back here in real life, but thank you again for your continued support for this digital concert series. Next, I'd like to say thank you to Norton Rose Fulbright, who's been sponsoring us for a few years. Thank you so much to you for your support, and to the Desjardins Caisse Populaire Bank here in Luskville. Desjardins has helped us make quite a few of the facility upgrades over the years, and again, a thanks to them for their continued sponsorship through this pandemic concert season. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to Bob and Sandra Barber, who moved to Luskville a few years ago, started coming to our concerts shortly after they moved to the area, and they've been generous supporters of the series for the past few years. Bob and Sandra, I know, don't really like the idea of these live stream concerts, but I think it's a great sign of their support that even still they decided to continue their support. And Bob and Sandra, we can't wait to have you back here in person so you can enjoy concerts in the way that you like most. So again, a huge thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you very much. Putting on a concert series when we're not in the middle of a global pandemic is a very complicated business. There's lots of things that have to happen, lots of moving pieces, and it takes a whole team of people. Some would say it takes a village. And I would say it takes even more than a village to put on concerts when we are in the midst of a pandemic. So I'd just like to say a few words of thanks to people and organizations who have helped and donated things and just been generous with their time to make these concerts happen. So first of all, you'll notice that I'm quite well lit this evening, and that's in huge part thanks to the Mill Road Community Centre in Old Chelsea, who very generously lent us their lighting equipment for these concerts to make sure that we were all well illuminated on stage. So a big thank you to Mill Road. Next, I'm hoping that the picture that you're seeing on your screens, despite the insane weather happening this evening, is very clear. And having strong internet is the first thing that you need for live stream concerts. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Cliff Bellis at Pioneer Wireless for making sure that our internet speeds out here were as fast as they needed to be to broadcast these concerts, to make sure that we could broadcast them. It's one thing to have fast internet when you're in the middle of a city. That's not complicated. It's very different when you're at the end of a long gravel road in the middle of the countryside. So it was no small feat to make that happen, and I really appreciate the extra effort that Cliff went to make sure that we could have that kind of internet bandwidth. So a big thank you to Cliff. Next, when Meagan plays this piano, you'll know that it is beautifully in tune, and that is huge thanks to Troy Scharf and 88 Keys Piano Tuning. Troy will literally come at any time of the day or night to tune our pianos. There's been situations in the recent past where I've said to him, look, we need I'm sorry to say this, we need an emergency tuning before the next concert. And he's showed up in the middle of a blizzard at 2 in the morning to make sure that the piano could be tuned. So if you're looking for a piano tuner, hire Troy. And I cannot say enough about the work that he's done to make sure that our instruments are always well kept. So a big thank you to Troy. You're not going to see this person this evening because he's making sure that you can see me. But my brother, Tate Becky, who's also the co-director of this series, is managing everything in the control booth for this live stream. So Tate is controlling the camera angles that you see. He's making sure that your viewing experience is good and comfortable. And I don't have much of that knowledge. That's all on him. So I really appreciate the technical expertise that Tate brings to this concert series. So a huge thank you to Tate for everything that he does to help make this series happen. And finally, we are in this wonderful venue on Venturing Hills Farm, which is a property owned by my parents, Peter and Debbie. I should know her name by now. So I'd like to say a huge thank you to them for allowing us to do these concerts since 2009, but especially now in this very complicated time, for allowing us to continue hosting concerts here. And very finally, I would like to say a big thank you to Ross Murray. Again, you're not going to see him because he's making sure that you can hear us. I should say you're not going to hear him unless something goes drastically wrong. You might hear some yelling from the back. But the sound quality coming through is, I've watched our past live stream concerts. It's excellent sound, and that's because Ross is such a great sound engineer. So a huge thank you to Ross for his work on the sound this evening. If you were here in person, I would say that you should fill out a form at the back of the hall to join our mailing list. Our mailing list is the way that we keep in touch with our audiences. However, you're not here, so it's actually easier than it was previously. At the top of your screen on our website, you'll see an orange button saying join our mailing list. If you click on that, it will unsurprisingly take you to a form in which you can leave your email and join our list. That's how we communicate with our audiences. We send out regular emails saying what's coming up next, and they're especially important right now because we really don't know what our next concert will look like until a week or so before the event, in terms of are we going to be able to sell in-person tickets or not. So if you're not on our mailing list, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, because now that we're broadcasting these concerts, the geographical boundaries don't matter. Please join that list, and that's the best way to find out what's happening next. We also have a Facebook page, so you can follow us on Facebook. That's another way of keeping in touch with what we're doing. Speaking of what we're doing, we have recently launched our 2021 concert series. Now, usually we would launch a whole year of concerts at once. We would program from January through December in one shot. We have no idea what the world is going to look like in 2021, although there seems to be a lot of hope that it's going to look a lot better than it has in 2020. Even still, there's a lot of uncertainty, so we've only programmed the first 4 concerts of the year. So if you actually, right now, you can take a moment, or after tonight's concert, if you go to the concerts page on our website, which is just at the top of your screen, you'll see it in the menu bar. If you click on concerts, go down to 2020 and 2021 concerts, you'll see what we have coming up between January and April. We have a few conditions that I wanted to have met for each of those concerts, just because of the state we're in, and a few other things that we've decided are pretty important about what we do going forward. So the first thing is, we're not hiring groups that are more than 3 people, because we just can't fit that many people on this stage with all social distancing precautions being observed. So groups are always smaller than 3. They have to be within the Ottawa, Toronto, or Montreal regions, so that travel here is not going to be an issue. We don't want to be in a situation where, because things get really bad with the pandemic, we can't have any visitors from out of the country or from parts of the country that are too far away. So everybody that's playing is from this quite small region. And finally, we're only hiring artists for the time being who earn their living primarily as freelancers. The whole music industry is obviously hard hit, as is every other industry right now. But within that industry, freelancers are facing the most challenges because they don't have a regular stream of income like you would have if you were an orchestral musician or working with university or something like that. So from January through April, all the artists that you'll see playing here are primarily freelancers and rely on that income as their main source. So those are our first 4 concerts of next year. Click on the concerts button and you'll see what we've got coming up. It's an exciting season. That leads me to tonight's concert, which, along with tomorrow afternoon's program, these are our last 2 concerts of 2020. This is a very special concert because we're partnering with the Silva Gelber Music Foundation to put on today's program. A bit later tonight, you're going to see me talk to Barber, the executive director of the foundation, and she's going to talk a little bit about what the foundation is and what they do and how they do it. But I would just like to say that this has been a very productive partnership that's lasted since 2016. And the idea is so that the Gelber Foundation supports musicians that are Canadian musicians that live all over the world. And what we've been doing with them is bringing together musicians that haven't previously worked together to put on concerts and to forge relationships that can hopefully go forwards between people that maybe otherwise would not have met. The music world is small, but it's not that small. So we hope that some of those connections that we've generated will lead to other artistic partnerships in the future. Today's program is different because we couldn't really do that in the middle of a pandemic. So Meagan and Amy have been playing together as a duo for quite some time. So they seemed like the perfect fit for this event because they are both Silva Gelber Foundation Award winners, but they've formed an artistic partnership that has taken them across Canada. So actually, when the pandemic hit in March, they were, I guess, 3/4 of the way through a cross-Canadian tour that had already taken them, I guess you'd already been to all 10 provinces, and two of the territories? No territories. So they were yet to go to the territories. And one of the stops that they were meant to have in May was in Old Chelsea, Quebec, which was going to be their National Capital Region concert. So the other reason that it seemed like the perfect idea to bring them here this evening was that this kind of addresses that that concert that they had to miss back in May. So I'm very glad that they were able to come. They're both based in Montreal. They're both from Saskatchewan originally. They met while studying at McGill University and have played as a duo now for quite a few years. So I'm very happy to welcome Meagan Milatz and Amy Hillis here this evening. So with that, I'd like to give you a short introductory video by Jocelyn Morlock, the composer of actually the second piece on the program, and then you'll hear from Meagan and Amy. So thank you very much for watching tonight and enjoy the concert.
Hi there, my name is Jocelyn Morlock and I'm the composer of the next piece, Alba. Alba was written for Meagan and Amy for their 2019 Canadian tour as a companion piece to the Mozart Violin and Piano Sonatas. The word Alba has a number of associations that I found appealing and inspiring while writing. Those who enjoy a good pun will note that the name Alba sounds suspiciously and intentionally reminiscent of Alberti Pace. In writing a companion piece for Mozart, I used the building blocks of his music, trills, ornaments, triadic harmony, and especially the Alberti bass so often found in the left hand of his piano music, to develop my own work. Small, regular ripples of melody that are initially created using these figures become faster, more irregular, and even distorted by wide leaps and bounds, but retain traces of their origins even at their most exuberant. The word alba is both Spanish and Italian for dawn. An alba is also a type of lyric poetry traditionally Provençal, about lovers who must part at dawn. Finally, there are Alba Roses, a shrub rose with beautiful white sweet-scented flowers. When I was writing Alba, during the very longest days of summer, I found that all my musical ideas had a strong association with dawn and renewal. Alba is a very sunny and optimistic piece, which begins quite gently but becomes increasingly heated and energetic over its brief duration. During these shortest days of winter 2020, I'm looking forward with optimism to when the days once again begin to lengthen.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much to Carson and to Jocelyn for your fantastic introductions. So before we jump right into Alba by Jocelyn, I will prelude us in to the concert with 3 short preludes by Frédéric Chopin to set the mood a little bit by this poet of the piano. thanks for listening, everyone. So this is a piece that is near and dear to our hearts. As you heard from Jocelyn, this was written for Amy and I for our Pan-Canadian tour that we had the huge opportunity and fortune to tour across Canada throughout the 2019 and 2020 season. And on this tour, we played this piece at every single concert that we gave. We got to number 43 out of 50, and we hope to get those last 7 in and to visit the territories at some point in the future. Another feature of our program throughout the Pan-Canadian tour was we would always perform a Mozart Sonata on the program, and that's sort of become our thing. We can't get enough of Mozart Sonatas, really. So while we were driving, I don't even know where we were. I don't know if you remember where we were, Amy, but we were listening to New Brunswick. Okay, I'll take your word for it. It's all a blur.
They don't know either way.
Yeah, so we were in New Brunswick and we were listening to some different Mozart sonatas, just sort of scheming about our next programs for the upcoming, for the future concert seasons. And the Mozart D major sonata that you're about to hear came up, and we both sort of mutually got super excited about it. So this was a piece that Mozart wrote when he was in Paris. He was kind of on a journey at this point in his life. He had started out in Salzburg, and then he set out to find better employment, which is kind of crazy for Mozart, being how revered he is. His music is today, but he was not as appreciated as he should have been when he was a composer back in the late 1700s. And so he was on a search for better employment, and that journey took him from Salzburg to Mannheim to Munich, and he ended up in Paris. So that's where he wrote this piece, and I think we both love it for its brilliance, its orchestral textures, and it really reminds us of kind of a double concerto for violin and piano. You'll hear this great duo cadenza at the end of the third movement that's super fun to just whip off and improvise together in a way. So we hope you enjoy this beautiful sonata by Mozart, one of our favorites. Happy listening.
I'm very happy to be joined now by Barbara Laskin, who is the executive director of the Silva Gelber Music Foundation. Barbara has been a friend for a long time. She has been the executive director of the foundation for many years and previously worked with the Canada Council for the Arts as a program director in the dance sector. So she has a long history in arts administration. So Barbara, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, this evening.
Carson, it's my pleasure to be with you always.
Well, I just thought we could talk a little bit about the Silva Gelber Music Foundation, and maybe we could start with, if you just tell us what it is that the foundation does.
Okay, well, it's pretty simple, actually. The foundation is there to support young Canadians and permanent residents of Canada who are on the cusp of a professional career. So it's to take them that step to bridge their studies and their working as young professionals around the world, really.
Okay. And actually, there are so many musicians around the world. You and I were talking about this earlier. So many musicians around the world that come from Canada that have benefited from the support of the foundation. What you guys do really makes a big difference to musicians' lives. But I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how the foundation started. Maybe a bit about who Silva Gelber was and what the genesis of the foundation has been since its inception.
Well, Silva Gelber, a number of people who attend your concerts, Carson, would have known her because she was a prominent figure in the National Capital Region. She was a very colorful character. She died in her late 90s in about 2003, I think is when she died.
Okay.
But she was really the first woman to rise to a senior position in the federal public service. And specifically, she became the director of the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor. So she ushered in things like pay equity and mat leave, maternity leave, and pension benefits for women, that kind of thing. So she was a kind of early feminist. I don't know that she would have applied that label to herself, but she was. She was subsequently appointed as Canada's rep to the United Nations Commission for the Status of Women, which she did for 4 years in the early 70s. And then subsequent to that, she was our delegate to the UN General Assembly in 1976 and 78. So she was a very interesting, prominent person.
Yeah.
She had two major passions in life, visual art and music. And her house was filled with musical instruments. She was an amateur musician herself. And she played, all kinds of things. She had a piano and she had a xylophone and she had drums and she had all kinds of stuff. She used to record herself singing along to, what are those, that series of records that?
Oh, Music Minus One.
Music Minus One. She did a whole bunch of those recordings. And she always carried in her handbag a little 1-inch harmonica.
Okay, wow.
So if you got her just a little bit tipsy, she would whip it out and be the accompaniment to Happy Birthday or whatever the occasion was. So she was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But she did have this very deep and abiding passion for music. Was a regular at the National Arts Centre and was very committed to the idea of helping young people who wanted to be musicians.
Okay.
So actually, as early as the 1970s, she established this foundation. Originally with the idea, I think originally she wanted to see if she could help bring about a national school for Canada. There was at the time the National Ballet School, there was the National Theatre School in Montreal, and there was no National Music School.
Yeah.
And well, as we know, historically, that never happened for a whole bunch of reasons we won't go into here, but eventually she settled on supporting young musicians through the Canada Council, which already, of course, had a very established system of support for individuals. So once a year, she would cut a check to them, and they would add it on to one of the grants that they were giving. And of course, there was very little required in the way of admin fees because they already had their administrative systems worked out. And so they had juries in place. So her grant came as a kind of top up to the best person in each competition.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, so that's how it started.
But since those days, the program has grown considerably. And I mean, so I think
Yeah,
you said that when
yeah.
it first
So
started, it was one award per year, but now you're giving a lot more than that.
it was one or two awards per year.
Okay.
Then what happened is that on her death, she actually left the bulk of her estate to the foundation.
Okay.
And so the board had to figure out what to do
Yeah.
because there was suddenly quite a bit more money than the annual $15,000 or $20,000 that she used to give to the Canada Council.
Yeah.
And so the board, for various reasons, the board decided to run its own process. It didn't want to necessarily be constrained by some of the regulations in place at the Canada Council.
Mm-hmm.
And it knew that there would be a lot more money to give. And so they decided to make a go of it. And so in 2008 was the first year that we began giving awards under the auspices of the newly configured program.
Well, so speaking of process, what is the process for somebody to get a grant? Because that might not be obvious to people, and there's so many musicians, so many deserving musicians across the country, and also Canadians living outside of Canada as well. How do you narrow it down, and how do you select your grant winners?
Well, first of all, I have to say that we do not entertain applications from individuals just directly out of the blue. They have to be nominated by their school, wherever they're studying, or by a former teacher, a prominent musician that's kind of known.
Right.
So what happens is that every year around this time of year, I invite dozens of all the most prominent schools across North America and Europe. So all the university programs, Curtis Juilliard, the Mozarteum in Salzburg, the Guildhall School in London, the Royal Academy, all of these great schools get a letter from us saying, if you have Canadian students, you're entitled to nominate up to 3 to get one of these awards. And we send them the criteria, and so they know what we're looking for. Mm-hmm. And we also send them a list of the past winners so they know what level we're pitching at, because we're pitching at a very high level.
Yeah.
So the nominations have to come, they have to pass through the dean or the principal's office. They don't just come from individual teachers, because somebody has to make sure, who are the 3 that are going to represent our school.
And this is, of course, across all disciplines. It's not just pianists or singers or violin players. It's everything.
It's all orchestral players and singers included. We get quite a lot of singers and have given a lot of grants to singers.
Yeah.
So generally what the deans will do is they will send out a note to all their staff and say, if you have anyone outstanding who happens to be Canadian, we can consider nominating them for this award. So we receive all of these annually, and we put together a kind of panel. We invite the nominees to submit, each of them about 45 minutes of music to us.
Yeah.
A variety of music. And we assemble a group of people to listen to all these tapes or videos, as the case may be. And it's a long process, and we winnow it down even further. So first of all, they passed through the eye of the needle of their principal, and now they're passing through this kind of pre-selection panel that we put together. And then the ones that survive that process are invited to come, all expenses paid, to a live audition. And we've been fortunate enough to be supported in this by the University of Ottawa, which gives us their premises, the Freeman Hall, and rehearsal rooms and so on. So we run these auditions generally over 3 days at the University of Ottawa. And as I say, we bring in people from wherever they are in the world. And if we need to put them up, we put them up and give them a stipend to have some meals with. And then they are submitted to this grueling exercise of performing for our jury.
So after all that, they end up in that position.
But I shouldn't say grueling, because it's usually a very wonderful, warm, and personal kind of experience. You've seen Freeman Hall; it's quite small at the University of Ottawa. It's a nice little performance space. And each candidate has roughly half an hour in front of the jury, and they are invited to play a selection, usually of about 3 things, or sing. as the case may be. We've had percussionists where the jury moves to another room where there's a full percussion set up. And they also get a chance to talk to the jury. So the jury will ask them questions about, what are your future plans? Where do you see yourself? What kind of contribution do you want to make to your profession? That sort of thing. So they get a really good sense of the full person.
Yeah.
And at the end of those 3 days, we have some really tough decisions to make, because by the time they reach us, they're already the crème de la crème. And
you're already picking from the very best options.
Yeah. So we have the great privilege of seeing really the top young professionals coming out of this country generally. Now, maybe they don't all apply to us, but every year we get more and more and more, and word spreads. And so, we're seeing some really exceptional young people.
But I would encourage all the viewers this evening to take a look at the website for the foundation, which is www.silvagelber.ca. And you can look and you can see all the winners from 2020 all the way back to the first years that the awards were given. And it's quite an impressive list. It reads like a history of Canadian music in the latter half of the 20th century and the first part of this century. But could you maybe tell us, I don't know, 1 or 2 award winners, or maybe more that are doing interesting things around the world now? Do you have any particular stories or people?
Well, let me start with the very first one, who is John Kimira Parker. It's a name that most people watching this will know. He was the first person to receive a Silva Gelber Music Foundation Award when it was under the aegis of the Canada Council. And of course, Silva Gelber was alive at the time, and they became great friends. She corresponded with him. He kept in touch with her. She went to all of his concerts whenever he came to Ottawa. It became a very special relationship that she really treasured. And she had that kind of relationship with a number of young musicians. That's the one that I know about, because we've had some discussions with him subsequently. But in more recent years, since we took over the process and the program, in 2008, I think was the first year we began giving grants. And at the time it was about 4 grants, as I said, and now it's up to more than that. We've had an amazing parade of talent. So just off the top of my head, who can I think of? Nikki Chewy, who did a year as concertmaster at the Met, and now recently was, I know, the concertmaster at the Buffalo Symphony. I'm not sure if he's still there. His younger brother, Timmy Chewy, who had the distinction of making our jury members cry. He was so beautiful.
I remember seeing him play at the National Arts Centre last year, I think, with the NAC Orchestra, Tchaikovsky's Violin Concerto. He's spectacular. Yeah.
He's breathtaking. And both brothers are just sensational, exceptional people as well, which I would say applies to almost everybody who's had this award. They're wonderful people.
That makes a difference. Yeah.
Yeah. And from this region, there's been a lot of talent. So I'm thinking Yolanda Bruno, whom you know well, Wallace Junta, Brian Chang, the cellist. More recently, a guy named Josh Lovell, who's with the Chicago Lyric Opera. Michael Bridge, who is, I think I'm right in saying, the only Canadian who has a PhD in accordion performance, which Silva would have loved. She would have absolutely loved that, and she would have whipped out her harmonica to accompany him. And then the other really outstanding person I can think of recently, who, by the way, won the Walter Prostowski Prize this past year, as well as a grant from us, is a young mezzo-soprano named Emma Nikolovska, who is currently with the Berlin Opera and in their young opera group. She's outstanding. She's beautiful, and she's really going to be something.
Well, and of course, 2 of your recent award winners as well are Amy Hillis and Meagan Milatz, who are playing for us this evening or this afternoon, depending on which concert this is.
I just want to say one thing to people viewing this.
Sure.
As a way of encouraging them to think about this. Sylvia Gelber was not the world's wealthiest person. She left a good-sized estate, but it now enables us to spend about $250,000 a year on giving grants to really deserving young artists.
Yeah.
And it just shows, what one individual can do to make the world a better place, to make the world sing, to make the world, hear music. So I just want to leave your listeners with that, because I think it's such a lovely thing that she left us all. And of course, her legacy continues. And Amy and Meagan are just such wonderful examples of the kind of thing I'm talking about. They're beautiful players, both of them, and lovely personalities. So I'm really looking forward to this concert.
Yeah, they're spectacular. And so, Barbara, thank you so much for your time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the concert as well.
I know I will. Thanks. Bye,
Okay.
Carson.
Well, David, my big question for you is, what was your inspiration for writing both the first violin and piano sonata? We can only play the first movement today, but if you want to focus on that one, great. And your inspiration for writing the serenade.
Oh, well, thank you very much for playing these. I've heard you play the sonata many times, and of course, I know you're recording. And I've never heard you play the serenade, so I'm so glad you're playing that. The sonata, the inspiration was I was doing a recital with Noel Laporte, and asked him, as I was wont to do in those early days. This is an early piece from the 90s, I think, sometime in the early 90s. And I often would ask, if I was doing a recital with someone, I'm a pianist, for those of you who don't know, if I wrote a piece for them, will you play it with me? And so Noel very kindly agreed to play this piece, whatever it was going to be that I wrote for him. So that was the motivation. And I found that was a good way to, when I was younger, to get pieces out there to be heard. And also it was great fun working with the artists. I love, you asked what the inspiration is. For me, the ultimate inspiration is always the people I'm working with. So so Noel was my inspiration. He was the one that I was listening to. I was hearing his violin playing. We played together a bit, and so of course I was asking him all kinds of violin questions that I might have had, and was very excited to be able to work with a pianist. At that time, I think Noel was probably concertmaster here in Regina, and it was fun. So the first movement, I can't remember exactly, that's a while ago now, but just the spirit of the piece kind of sets something at the beginning, you know, when it begins with the piano being quite declamatory there, and then the violin coming in. It's sort of setting up a sense of occasion. But to me, the music, almost all the music I write, has something to do with a journey. I find that a very nice analogy, to think of traveling through a piece of music as traveling through a landscape and seeing different things along the way. And as you travel, whether by train or by car or by bike or walking, things change, your perspective changes. And that's always, to me as a musician, the interesting thing, how the body changes and reacts in order to produce either very energetic sounds or things that are more gentle. You know, so just all those emotional contrasts that come into play mirror traveling through a landscape to me.
Thank you. And for the serenade, your inspiration.
Oh yes, the serenade again was written for people that I know very well. It was my uncle, who was my first piano teacher, and my aunt, who was a violinist, still is a violinist. They still play together. They live in California now, but it was for their 50th anniversary. I think I wrote this little serenade for them as a little gift, and so that's what that was about. My aunt, by the way, Amy, studied with Howard Layton Brown.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Another heavyweight violinist from Regina.
Yes.
And I'm not in any way saying in my category, I meant like Noel Laporte, very much one of those people I looked up to when I was growing up.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I remember the first time, I was thinking about this morning, the first time I met Howard would have been at my aunt and uncle's wedding. And I, at that time, was 7 years old.
Wow.
And so this piece the serenade was written in 2007, which was, I guess, 50 years after that wedding. So of course, I didn't meet him again until I moved to Regina many years later, but yeah.
That's amazing. So David, did you ever get a chance to perform the serenade yourself for your aunt and uncle? Was there a big celebration that
No, but they have performed it.
Okay.
No, in fact, I haven't seen them in person for quite a while. Actually, I think the last time, it was probably about 10 years ago, my uncle came up for my 60th birthday here to Canada, but I haven't been down to see them for years in the States. And so we just talk on the phone basically. And
Okay.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I personally, I love the fact that your music is based so much on these relationships that you have with people, which is, I know for both Amy and I, such an important part of music making. And it's cool that comes right from the genesis of these compositions that we're performing of yours. So thanks so much for everything you shared with us. And we look forward to exploring more of your compositions and sharing your music with more and more audiences.
Thank you so much. It gives me great pleasure to hear you play.
Thank you, David. So nice to see you. Thanks everyone for watching and for being a part of this evening here with Meagan and I at the fabulous Pontiac Enchanté. I have to say that I have very fond memories of performing here with full houses, sometimes in July where it's 40 degrees and sometimes in December where there's a blizzard going on outside. Not too unlike today. But to have you with us virtually is really a treat. And Meagan and I were saying that it has been way too long since we performed for people. In fact, our last official recital before the pandemic hit was, I think, March 14th, something around there. And we were saying that we took it for granted, and to be able to perform live with you watching at home and being a part of this music and being able to share this music is truly a privilege. So for example, the pieces we just played are by David McIntyre, who is a Saskatchewan composer, and you did meet him as part of our intro. It's been our great pleasure to share his music with more ears around the country and around the world, in fact. Now we're going to move to a composer. She is actually from the United States. She was born in Arkansas, and her music is particularly unique because it synthesizes her African-American heritage, musical heritage, with her classical compositional training. So she went to the New England Conservatory of Music as an example of sort of, that classical influence. But then she also writes African-American spirituals into her music. So the next two pieces we're going to play for you are examples of that. The first one is the first fantasy that she wrote for violin and piano. And it starts with this fantastically romantic cadenza, something that you would hear in perhaps a romantic concerto, definitely from the classical world. And she also uses other techniques. If you're a music nerd, she has this sense of sonata form,
and the tonalities, the keys that go with that. But you'll also hear in the middle of it, she uses this beautiful spiritual theme. And I think it's integrated in a way that really makes the idea of the spiritual come off the page. It's framed by this virtuosity, this energy, this fire, and then we come together with this theme that you'll hear in the middle. So without further ado, here is Florence Price's first fantasy for violin and piano.
much, everyone. We have one more little set of pieces to play for you, but before we do, we would love to acknowledge the amazing team here at Pontiac Enchanté. Thank you so much to Carson and Tate Becca, as well as Peter and Debbie Becca for hosting. It's been such a pleasure, and I just was telling everyone a little bit earlier that I think my favorite thing about playing here is that you can hear the horses stamping their feet on the floor below us. It's so cool. So it's really a special place to be. Thank you so much as well to Ross Murray for taking care of the sound. I am sure from your end that the sound is coming out nicely through your speakers, and that is all thanks to Ross's expertise. So thank you very much. Also to the Silva Gelber Foundation for making this concert possible.
And along with the Silva Gelber Foundation, I'd also like to thank the Canada Council for the Arts for lending me this instrument that I could play here tonight. It's been a while since it's been in concert, so thank you for everyone for making that happen. And most of all, thank you to all of you who are listening. As Carson said, this would not be possible with your support, both in terms of your donations, but also most importantly in terms of your love for music, your love for live music, whether it's virtual or in person. And we hope that very, very soon it can be in person as well. So thank you again for being here. We're going to end today with 3 spirituals, also by Florence Price. She arranged these 3 for violin and piano. And we're going to let that send you off for your evening. Thanks again for being here.